What's up everybody, Nate here, and the jobs market in the United States is changing dramatically once again, with one of the biggest changes that I've seen being a power shift from the employees all the way over to the employers. This is mainly because our economy is starting to slow down, which means our jobs market is also getting a whole lot tighter and there are not as many jobs out there. Employees now have to kind of go to whatever is available instead of having all of these jobs at their disposal. Things like the Great Resignation, the anti-work culture, and quiet quitting all kind of put the power in employees' hands and back into our workforce. But here's the really strange thing kind of going on in the jobs market right now. There are still hundreds of thousands of job postings all throughout the United States. And there are millions of Americans who are ready to kind of pick up and fill those positions, but there's a lot of Americans reporting that they're not getting hired, like these companies are just not hiring them. And the reality is, these companies don't want to hire you, and this is why. I mentioned before something called quiet quitting. Quiet quitting is essentially when a 9-to-5 employee does their work from the hours of 9 to 5. They don't put any extra work in, they don't put any extra effort in because the companies that they work for don't put any extra effort in for them. But the new work phenomenon that I'm seeing a lot of right now is being called quiet hiring. Now, quiet hiring is completely different than quiet quitting, but it is on the scale of the employer side and not for the employees, and it kind of helps to explain why no businesses are hiring people right now. Like I said before, our entire economy is kind of going through it right now, so businesses are trying to figure out how to balance that with also having a sustainable workforce. But the problem is our workforce just isn't sustainable right now. In 2021 and 2022, we had an abundance of money available, and we also had an abundance of positions available. This meant that people were kind of switching around jobs all the time, and every single time they got a new job, they also got better benefits, they got a better work-life balance, and also they got better pay. But all of that is starting to backfire on our workforce in 2023 now, because we have a bunch of startups and a bunch of public companies that may have hired too many people and may have paid them too much. They were creating positions just to create positions. They were hiring people, and while that is a good thing, some jobs just should not exist, and businesses were basically hiring people in order to try to get ahead as fast as possible, but they were growing beyond fundamentals, so now they're trying to cut back as consumer spending drops and the Federal Reserve raises its interest rates. But the reality is all of these businesses, while they're trying to cut back as much as possible, still have vital positions that they need in their business. So what exactly are they doing? Well, that is where quiet hiring comes in. Instead of hiring full-time positions, they are hiring contract employees, or they're hiring a bunch of part-time people to kind of work on what a full-time person was supposed to do. At the end of the day, this is something that businesses are trying to implement for a lot of full-time positions because they don't know what is going to happen next for our economy. If they start to see some big economic turmoil, well, they want to avoid layoffs, and that is the big concern that we are seeing in 2023 and we could possibly see into the future. There have already been over 100,000 plus layoffs in the United States, with November seeing over 70,000 alone, and the fear is that we could see even more as the economy starts to shrink. The last thing that a lot of companies want to do is hire a full-time workforce just to lay them off in a few months. So they'd rather hire contract employees and kind of work with them for the short term and then maybe make that into a full-time position down the road if the economy improves. Not only that, but this is something that for a lot of employees makes sense because many employees have gone through several jobs over the last couple of years and now they want something that is going to remain sustainable. And for a lot of companies, they're not offering full-time sustainable positions. Like, you might get hired in and get a bonus check and then a few months later you could be fired. That is just the volatility of our workforce right now because businesses are really struggling, and the higher the Federal Reserve interest rates go, the bigger chance we are going to see layoffs across the board. Businesses, both in the startup and the private world and in the public world, rely on investors, and investors rely on getting money from the Federal Reserve and also through debt. They take on this debt and then they invest in companies and try to get a higher return than what they invested. Some of the time they use their own money. They use some of the returns to invest in other companies. But this can get risky when the returns get lower, and the higher the interest rates are, the more expensive it is to take on debt. They now need a higher return, so investors are aren't giving as much money to businesses. Meanwhile, we have issues of affordability and inflation right now in our economy, meaning consumers aren't spending much money either. So you have consumers essentially spending a lot less, and you have investors investing a lot less too. That is a double whammy for businesses, and in order to continue to thrive, they've got to figure out a way to continue to be profitable, and that means lowering their margins. When those margins get lower, well, that means they're spending a lot less too, and of course, they're cutting their costs, and that usually means people. But like I said, this could mean that people who are looking for new jobs actually get the full-time job that is right for them, and they're not getting into a role that is just going to be eliminated down the road. I know that there is a lot of job applicants out there that are simply avoiding certain companies because they know that layoffs could be around the corner, and that's bad for business and it's bad for company perception. So they just want to avoid that. Instead of putting out positions for hire, they are internally quiet hiring. This is simply going a different route. They're trying to get those skills and that value that they need to continue to push their company forward without paying those huge premiums. And I think that this is a larger trend that we're going to continue to see. You're going to see a lot of businesses kind of scrambling and doing everything that they can to survive over the next couple of years. We've already started to see a ton of businesses actually push for people to return to the office instead of having that hybrid work style. Bob Iger from Disney actually just said that all of his corporate employees need to return to the office for at least 4 days a week starting March 1st. And we've seen a slew of other companies do the exact same thing. And the big question is, well, if everything was working, then why exactly would companies want to do that to their employees? Well, the answer is pretty simple. They want the highest amount of productivity as possible from their full-time staff. They want to make sure that their staff is working 8 hours a day, Monday through Friday, or whatever their schedule is, right? They want to make sure that the job is getting done and they're not taking time during work hours to kind of slack off. Sure, productivity might have been good over the last couple of years, but it didn't need to be exceptional for a lot of these companies to get by, right? Because they had so much money and because there were so many people lining up to work for their business, it didn't really matter what the profit margins were because they were going to continue to be making money, and they just assumed, a lot of these companies assumed, that this was going to continue in our economy. Lots of really free money and really low interest rates. But like all things, that came to an end at the end of last year. So now businesses are kind of scrambling, and that includes bringing people back to the office. And I think overall we're going to see the jobs market get a whole lot smaller in the United States. I mentioned before that the jobs market is starting to shrink, and what that means for workers is that they have a whole lot less opportunities to choose from. Workforce kind of gets what they get right now because there are fewer job postings out there, and because businesses had to take on such a big premium over the last couple of years, those premiums such as better benefits and better pay might start to shrink as the labor market shrinks. So the time of ridiculous sign-on bonuses and ridiculous salaries right off the bat might be over for the extended future. We haven't quite got to this point yet, but eventually you're going to see more people than jobs available, which means the labor market is going to be very, very tight, and in order for people to get these jobs, they may have to lower their expectations. That saves a business a lot of money, but if you are a business right now, you kind of have to meet people halfway. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. So businesses that want to attract workers should still try to offer as much as they possibly can and show the benefits of working for them. That way they get that benefit back with all of the people applying to their brand. More often than not, people want a really solid working culture. They want work-life balance, and if they have to sacrifice a little bit of pay to get that, well, studies show that, yeah, they're willing to do that. That should be businesses' focuses into 2023 because they can't really offer those benefits and that pay anymore, so they're going to have to be loose with what they can offer. The same goes for workers. Workers should try to work with these companies because they know that things are struggling right now. Because they know that everyone is struggling right now. Americans are struggling right now. Businesses are struggling too, so everybody kind of needs to work together in order to get to that long-term goal. Unfortunately, the way that our economy is set up right now, unfortunately, you can't rely on your business and the business that you work for to give you the standard of living that you want. You have to go out and get that for yourself, and there are plenty of other ways to do that. Your boss and all of these other businesses are not going to give them to you. you have to give them to yourself through financial education. Everybody out there has a fiduciary duty, which basically means who are you responsible for taking care of financially? Businesses are responsible for taking care of the people that grow their business, and that's not always consumer spending. A lot of the times that's investors. It certainly is true with your big public companies. But for you and your family, you are the one that is supposed to take care of you, so you need to go out and figure out, how can I make more money? How can I become wealthier? And more importantly, how can I stop worrying about all of these financial issues and our economy? Once those goals are aligned within yourself, you'll be able to find something that aligns more with how you actually want to live instead of how much you want to make. Above all else, for businesses and employees right now, there are still opportunities out there for everyone. Quiet hiring is just another way that businesses are trying to cut costs and save time and money overall. But the system still offers many, many opportunities for everybody, but only if you know how the system works. But that is it for today's business and financial news breakdown. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to stay up to date with all the top business and financial news from around the country, our team puts together a free daily newsletter, and you can subscribe to it by clicking the link in this corner right here. And if you want to stay up to date with me and everything else happening in the business and financial world, I'm putting out updates 7 days a week over here on this channel, and I've actually got another one ready for you right here, so be sure to check that out before you go. That is it for me, everybody. Be kind out there, and I'll see you all in the next one.